So question number 6, again from the sentence placement or a para completion. So the sentence says, beyond undermining the monopoly of the state on the use of force, armed conflict also creates an environment that can enable organized crime to prosper, right? So before that, I think so there is something that is armed conflict already doing, okay? And beyond undermining the monopoly of the state on the use of the force, armed conflict also creates. It cannot be there in one for sure, because also creates does not make a sense here. So let's see what is the paragraph logical flow is. So linkages between illicit arms, organized crime, and armed conflict can reinforce one another while also escalating and prolonging violence and eroding governance, right? So the very first sentence, it basically talks about the linkages between the illicit arms, organized crime, and armed conflict that can reinforce one another while also escalating and prolonging violence and eroding governance, right? Again, we cannot say beyond undermining the monopoly of the state on the use of force, armed conflict also creates an environment, because this is right now we are talking about all the three, not just the specifically the armed conflict, right? Now, financial gains from crime can lengthen or intensify armed conflicts by creating revenue streams for non-state armed groups, NSAGs, okay? The correct placement for this sentence is option number 3, okay? Now the option number 3 is your blank number 3 basically. So why? Because now you can say that the preceding idea, it's talking about before option 3. So the paragraph is basically discussing the linkages between illicit arms, organized crime, and armed conflict, that noting that each can reinforce each other and they can escalate violence and they can erode governance, okay? And then they say that the financial gains from crimes, okay, can prolong armed conflicts, okay, by providing by creating revenue streams for non-state armed groups, right? Now, after this blank number 3, we say that in this context, when hostilities cease and parties to a conflict move towards a peaceful resolution, the widespread availability of the surplus arms and ammunition can contribute to a situation of criminalized peace that obstructs sustainable peace building efforts, right? So it concludes by emphasizing that the policymakers later on, they face challenges due to the continuation of criminal activities post your conflict also. Now, this they say that beyond undermining the monopoly of the state. So beyond undermining the monopoly of the state, it actually links to this idea, because they say that it also creates a revenue streams for the non-state armed groups. So beyond undermining the monopoly of the state on the use of force, armed conflict also creates an environment that can enable organized crime to prosper. And then after the blank number 3, it is telling how the organized crime can prosper, right? So because they say that when hostility cease and parties to a conflict, they come towards a peaceful resolution, the widespread availability of the surplus arms and ammunition can contribute to a situation of criminalized peace. So that this sentence, you can say, it bridges the discussion between how armed conflict is financed by crime and the subsequent environment that fosters the organized crime. So that is the reason that the third is the best answer to it. Couple of reasons. Financial gains from crime can lengthen intensified armed conflicts by creating revenue streams for non-state. So but non-state is undermining the monopoly of the state. And then it says it also creates an environment, right? So before that, it is also doing something. So it can lengthen or intensify armed conflicts, and it can also create an environment that enable organized crime, and the organized crime is highlighted after the sentence number 3. Hence, third is the correct answer. I hope you understand in case if you made a mistake here with this question.